Alrighty. It is 9 o'clock, the appointed hour. If everyone is ready to roll, I'll call the meeting to order. I need a confirmation of the agenda first, please. Someone move that. Jim, yep. Seconded by Alan. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you very much. Is there any declaration of pecuniary interest related to any item on today's agenda? Not seeing any. If one should arise during the course of the meeting, feel free to declare it at that time. Adoption of the minutes of the June 20th Police Services Board meeting. Someone care to move those minutes? Adoption. Alan and Jim, all in favor? That is carried. Any business arising? Not seeing any. Now we come to the meat and potatoes of the meeting. What's the reason we're all here is the detachment commander's report. Good morning, Paul. The floor is yours.
Good morning, Your Worship, and good morning, everybody. Hope everybody's having a great summer. Just before I get started, I have Constable McNeil joining us this morning, and but behind me are a lot of good people who do incredible work, and Constable McNeil is one of those people. She does tremendous work in preparing this report and getting it to press in time and doing a lot of good work. So I just wanted to take a moment to recognize her and her efforts and thank her for joining us this morning. So without any further ado, I'll get into the report. Well, it's been a busy summer for us and for everybody all around. In order to address some of the things that we need to address in this area because of the transient nature of some of our population, we employed a new tool in the OPP, and we call it the Major Event Tool. It's a computer-based program that allows officers from across the province to volunteer to work in the Grey Bruce area to support the extra pressures we have during the summer. Through the implementation and use of this tool, we've seen approximately a 92% compliance rate for additional shifts to cover the area, which has, I hope, realized for everybody on this call in your communities, a little bit of extra presence in the area, and you should be seeing some more police. So we're pretty proud of this tool and the way we do it, the way we've implemented it. We're going to do a review at the end of the summer and look at its effectiveness and look at ways to improve it for next year. But we've seen a huge benefit from this tool. Again, our officers are working diligently conducting RIDE. We've seen some success with taking impaired drivers off the road throughout the counties. That should, in turn, increase the presence as well. I'm going to touch on a little further in the report, but we had a couple of members recognized for their efforts in relation to communities, and we're proud of that. You'll notice this report is called Quarter 2 report. We're looking at a Quarter 1, 2, 3, and 4 as we navigate towards one detachment, one board. We're continuing to develop and implement a report that recognizes the implement of that structure. So just slowly as we navigate towards that, and I'm hearing just not officially, but I'm hearing spring of 2024 for the one detachment, one board. Nothing official, but that's sort of the information that we're hearing. But as we navigate towards that, we're just slowly introducing the concept, so it's not a huge change for everybody. And as we go through the summer, as always, we encourage all to respect speed limits, avoid distractions, drive sober, and use your safety restraint devices. As we get into the report, we're seeing some success in that regard. We'll start with crime. Our crime unit has been extraordinarily busy. Not only are they dealing with the major occurrences in our own areas, but they're dealing also with some major occurrences in Owen Sound and supporting them through some complex investigations. Probably the one of note is the robberies in Saugeen and the Dundalk Credit Union robbery. These investigations take some time, but there are definitely leads, and they're well, specifically with relation to Dundalk, they're certainly progressing in the investigation. As you can see from the information here, it's not unique to Dundalk. There's some information that links it to others across the province. So it's multi-jurisdictional, but they're working towards a resolution for that. There was a pedestrian motor vehicle fatality that they conducted a thorough investigation, identified the offender, and laid some charges. They continue to work on an opioid death from 2021, where they've identified suspects, and I'm going to touch on that a little more as we get into the drug investigations. So moving over to Community Street Crime Unit, who are the unit that does conduct the drug investigations. You'll see in the statistical portion that there's not a huge increase in drug investigations. And I've mentioned this to the board before. We have changed our focus from the end user or the addict and now focus on the manufacturers and distributors of drugs. That is why you see such a reduction in the number of charges. We're treating the addiction in the end user as a public health issue and trying to focus on those who supply the drug to the addicts. And those investigations are very complex. They take time, but when they come to fruition, they're very effective. That's where you see the large seizures of cash and drugs and all of those things. Our mobile crisis response team continues to have a massive impact on our areas. You'll note here that 40% of mental health calls for service only occur during MCERT hours, but over 90% of the calls are referred back to them. So just because they're not working doesn't mean they don't conduct outreach at later times and have an effect. We're seeing significant diversions from hospitals, as we all know. That allows for our health workers to focus on the emergencies that come into emergency rooms. It allows the mental health patients to get the services in the time and place that they need it, and it facilitates our officers back on the road to be more effective in their communities. So we're continuing to investigate ways to enhance that program, increase the resources, because we're seeing the effectiveness in many, many ways throughout our communities and within the OPP. Moving over to media, I myself anecdotally have noticed a significant increase in our social media presence, and I hope that everybody on this call has as well. We can attribute that to some new ideas from our new media officer, Krista Linthorne, our community safety officer. She took over from Nick Wilson. Nick did a fantastic job, but he has moved on in his career to focus on his passion, which was serious collision investigations. And Krista has taken over seamlessly. She's doing a very, very good job. In the report, there's a picture here of one particular incident where a high-end sports car was stopped for speeding at a fairly significant speed. And it's funny in social media what'll catch on, and that one got a lot of attention. And that was part of a series of a number of traffic complaints. We received about a bunch of high-end cars, and this one happened to be clocked by the officer. So good work by the officers and good work by the media folks bringing it to the attention of all. Our auxiliary unit, I continue to be immensely proud of our auxiliary unit and the work they do. As a matter of fact, I had the pleasure of attending an auxiliary graduation in Orillia as a West Region representative. And front and center was the staff sergeant of the Grey Bruce Auxiliary Unit, because he has been instrumental in the training of all the auxiliaries across the province. In spite of his efforts there and how busy he is doing that, the remainder of the members were active in our communities. We've done food drives. They continue to ride with our officers. They do the Safeguard program, and it's a bit of a recruiting tool for us. One of our auxiliaries has been hired by the OPP and starts in a couple of weeks on her recruit journey, and will be joining us here in the Chatsworth detachment in probably February. So we're pretty excited about our auxiliary program. As we move on to the statistical portion, which most people don't find terribly exciting, but I'm going to try and jazz it up a little bit for everybody here. It's interesting, we're seeing a significant increase in calls for service in Southgate. We attribute that to an increase in population. More people, more calls. We have started to staff up in that area to address the calls for service. Or not started to, we have been for some time staffing up because of the increase in population and calls. We don't expect that trend is going to change anytime soon. As we go through, we looked at violent crime. with an 80% increase, obviously that causes us some concern. So we delved into those statistics a little bit, and we're seeing a variety of things, but in the south end of Southgate, again, with an increase in development and population, there seems to be a focus in that area on the calls for service that are related to violent crime. And we'll continue to monitor it and see if there's things we can do to specifically address it. But unfortunately, as we look into the statistics, it's not any one thing that is that can be addressed. It's a constellation of types of violent crimes. So we'll continue to look at that and come up with strategies to address it. We are looking at some additional funding through grant processes for repeat offenders and things of that nature, and perhaps through those processes we can see a reduction in that violent crime. Pleased to report that property crime is down significantly. That's always an interesting statistic for me, because although in the judiciary, some people perceive property crime as victimless, it's definitely not victimless, because all of that property is owned by somebody, and somebody has to be victimized in the process to lose that property. So to see a 58% reduction, I was very pleased to see that. We spoke about drugs and the focus, and that's, you'll see that it's neutral in terms of the drug investigations, and that's because, as we spoke about, we focus on the more complex investigations. Criminal traffic is relatively neutral for the most part, although there is significant enforcement activities being conducted. And one of the things we do now that we hadn't done in the past, and in the more recent past we are able to do, is to track warnings. And warnings, depending on the circumstances, can have equal effect as a charge. It's very interesting. Sometimes people who have traffic violations can be experiencing some very difficult things. So our officers always have discretion. They don't always have to charge, and a warning can be equally as effective. So it's nice to have the ability to help somebody have a better day, I guess is the way I will put it. We continue to focus on the big four: the impaired speed, restraints, and distracted driving. The MVC, the motor vehicle collisions, they're relatively neutral, although the one thing I did want to point out is the year-to-date collision at the bottom. You'll see a 44% reduction in fatalities over the area as a whole. That is a significant statistic for us. The exponential impacts of a fatal collision on not only the people that are that pass as a result of the collision and their families are impacted, but it's also all of our emergency responders, the police, the fire in your communities, the paramedics in your communities, the community itself, always are significantly impacted by fatal collisions. So to see that reduction, it's really nice to see. When I first came here last year, there was a significant increase in fatal collisions. So to see that reduction supports the efforts we're making to reduce them locally. Now, having said that, we're still in the tail end of summer and there's a lot of year left, but I am pleased to see that statistics anyways at this point. Over to our specific TMU, our traffic management unit, which is staffed by 2 members of our detachment. They've been very busy. You can see there's just that those 2 members alone have issued 322 provincial offenses charges, been 256 warnings, been 4 impaired driving charges. And in spite of all that, they found time to work with our municipal partners in policing and conduct some commercial motor vehicle blitz activity. Commercial motor vehicles are bigger and larger, and it's important to ensure they're safe on the road, because those collisions, when they involve a commercial motor vehicle, are generally a little more significant than your general collision. So that activity was appreciated. They inspected 117, 72 charges laid, 16 warnings. It was, and 66 commercial motor vehicles being placed out of service. That's 66 commercial motor vehicles that were not safe and were taken off the road. And I see one of our esteemed board members there in a commercial motor vehicle right now, and I am more than confident that that is a safe vehicle. So I wanted to pay special attention to some special recognition. There was a municipality within Grey Bruce that recognized 2 officers as Officer of the Year, and that's Constable O'Neill and our very own Staff Sergeant Anderson. Policing is a very difficult job. Although we know we have a great deal of support from our communities and from our boards and from our councils, this is just such a nice reminder that we do have that support. Day in and day out, sometimes this job can be daunting. We see things in our job that nobody should have to experience, and just this little bit of recognition was pretty special. And those two officers in particular were very deserving of that recognition. And then I just wanted to finish off with the cadet program. There was a time in policing where we didn't have to put much effort into recruiting. We would get thousands of applications every year, and we had the ability to pick through those applications and hire accordingly. We're not seeing the volume of applications we've seen historically, so we have to be creative in our recruiting efforts. The cadet program is a way to bring somebody into the policing environment, give them a chance to experience it, support the detachment with many of our functions, and then transition into a role as a full-time police officer. So we look forward to the implementation of the cadet program. We expect to see a cadet here in Grey Bruce, and we hope that person decides on a career in policing, because that's kind of the intention of it. So we look at outreach to our communities for recruiting activities. We look at our auxiliary program, we look at the cadet program, and then we look to our boards and our supporters in our communities that if you know of anybody who you think would make a good police officer, please send them our way. And we're happy to have a conversation, introduce them to the profession, and determine if it's something they would like to do. So we are all recruiters. Everybody on this call is a recruiter, and I hope that you will send people our way if you think they'll make a good police officer. And subject to any questions, that's the entirety of the report. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Good report as always. Any questions from the board members? I had a couple questions, Paul. The first one was related to the electronic tool to fill the shifts from staff from across the province. If are those shifts that you're filling, are they over and above what you would normally have on the road, or if you can't get the help, are those shifts that are left empty?
So that's over and above what we would normally have on the road. So that supplements our staffing because of the increase in summer population. So to staff it, your worship, to staff it all year long does not always makes us not efficient and effective, but we have those peak times where we need to fill those shifts. So we do that through that tool. It was actually born out of the Ottawa situation where we had to reach out to the province very quickly. And what it does, it allows us to determine the member, where they're from, what their needs are, like dietary restrictions, what their specialties are. Are they a breath tech? Are they a scenes of crime officer? Are they a marine officer? So we can leverage all those skills for our own detachment area. So,
Excellent.
But to answer your question, that's over and above what we would normally have on the road.
Excellent. Thank you, sir. The second question was on the drug piece, the focus on the manufacturers and distributors of the drugs as opposed to the addicts. Would you expect to see an uptick in, I don't know, petty crime and that kind of stuff potentially done by the addicts because they can't get their supply, so to speak?
So great question, and I thank you for it, your worship. The one thing that I didn't introduce is the other things that we're doing to support addicts. So we have partnerships with public health, and we have partnerships with mental health. So on one hand, we're focusing on the manufacturer and distributor for enforcement. We partner with the subject matter experts in providing supports to the addict to try and help them through that process. And that mitigates some of the property crime issues.
Excellent.
So you talk about things like safe supply and different sources, your methadone and things like that. So we're working on the enforcement part at a higher level, and then partnering with our community partners locally to provide supports for addicts. And quite often addiction and mental health go hand in hand. So those supports are very important. And I should have tied the MCERT portion back into that as well. Really what we're trying to do, historically, there were silos where the police did this, and then we're breaking down those silos and working together. And it's having a great effect. It really is.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you very much. And just one final comment. I want to refer to the meeting that was held in Swinton Park. And I know you regrettably couldn't be there, but I want to thank Staff Sergeant Anderson, and I forget the name of the constable that was there as well, or the two constables, I think there was. But it was a good meeting. Jim was there as well. I'm not sure we had any solutions, but it certainly gave the community an opportunity to express their concerns. And I think everybody came away with a clearer picture of what is going on and what is being done to mitigate the challenges. And I don't know if you have anything more to add to that, Paul, but I thought it was a good meeting.
I did. I received a briefing from the folks that were there. Ironically, I was out spearheading a warrant to take some drugs off the street. So that's where I was. I was in another part of the province doing that, and that's why I couldn't attend. But yeah, we always want to work in partnership with our communities, and that was the intention of having that town hall, and to give those folks a voice and to provide an explanation. We are always, and so we should be, we have to operate within the confines of the law, within the confines of policy, and within the confines of the expectations of those we serve. So it's always they're competing priorities, and it's always a balancing act to do all of those things, but we'll continue to do that. And we'll continue to work with the folks in that community. It's not, we didn't walk away from that and say we're finished now. There's certainly efforts that continue.
Thank you, sir. Okay. Last opportunity, Alan or Jim, any questions? Okay, not seeing any. I need a motion to receive the report for information. Jim and Alan, all in favor? That's carried. Thank you very much. Correspondence. We have, excuse me, one letter there from two letters from Crime Stoppers. We need a motion to approve receiving those. Alan and Jim, any discussion regarding that correspondence? No. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you very much. Any new or unfinished business? Nope. Not seeing any. Good news and celebrations. Anybody want to? I guess my little question there about Swinton Park was good news, I guess. At least I think it was. And maybe more news to come from that meeting. Okay. Well, our next meeting is scheduled for October 17th of this year at 9 a.m. I presume, Holly, that will be electronic as others have been. Yeah.
That's correct.
Okay. Last chance. Anybody want to say anything? I know we all want to stretch the meeting out as long as we can. All right. I'll need a motion to adjourn. Jim and Alan, all in favor?
Yep.
Excellent. Well, we are adjourned. Thank you, Paul, for your attendance. It's always a pleasure.
My pleasure, Your Worship.